computer. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infracost July community call. Oh, is my voice okay? I'm getting some echo. Okay, it's fine. I've got a couple of topics that I put on the GitHub issue. Here comes Richard. I think Richard is from Pulumi. He's dialing in. So the topics I had that I wanted to quickly cover, Hugo was going to do a demo of the Visual Studio Code extension, which is awesome. I was going to demo the project name stuff very quickly and just show that because that's coming up soon. And then I'll talk briefly about two things that we're working on right now. And one of them is Infracost Cloud. I'll give a quick demo of that. What do people want to talk about? So what other topics should we talk about?
I'm also interested. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm also interested in the overlap of the Infracost analysis of the Terraform and intersection with program analysis. So I work in program analysis, and I'm curious, how could analysis of application code help inform cost estimates on the infrastructure layer? Sure,
that sounds fun. Harsh, I think you were going to do a quick demo of something you've got and you've been building around Infracost as well.
Yes, so I just made a contribution to one of the open source projects. So I'm just going to show on how we integrated Infracost for all sort of cost report, and a possible idea that I'm exploring around integrating Infracost with a PyP package, which we can just publish and use with a lot of Python applications all around. So that's just a hobby project that I was proposing, but I guess it is good to propose that in a community meetup.
Perfect. Okay, maybe we should do some quick introductions then. So everybody knows who's who, because there's a couple of new people on the call. I can go first. I'm Ali. I'm one of the Infracost founders. Who wants to go next? Hugo, Tim.
Tim, I'm an Infracost engineer. I'm going to turn off my video because my internet's lagging.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hugo. I'm an engineer at Infracost, and apologies, my background noise is a bit much. I'm actually in Exeter at the moment, and this pub is the only place that I could find that had internet, so apologies.
Yeah, Simeon, do you want to go, and then I'll just call out the other people?
Yeah, so I'm Simeon. I'm from the community. I'm just happy to follow this project and just seeing what is happening here.
Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm an assistant professor at Barnard College at Columbia University, and my research focuses on program analysis, and I've worked with infrastructure as code analysis tools, more on the research side, and just curious how this might intersect with some research I'm doing.
Very cool. Richard.
I'm Richard. I'm with Pulumi. I added support for Pulumi.
It's coming along nicely. Every so often I just see the rebase branch and I run it. It's very cool. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, every time I try and watch when y'all merge and try and keep it up to date.
Harsh, quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Harsh. I just graduated last month, so I'm an open source engineer, and I've been just dabbling around with Infracost because of my interest in the whole FinOps field. So I previously worked at a company that was optimizing GCP cost, and I'm just looking into infrastructure as a code optimization and stuff.
Awesome. Very cool. And Keith, if you'd like to give a quick introduction.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm just from the community, just really interested to hear what you guys have going on. I'm in charge of a small department of DevOps engineers at a company called Janaya. Been using Infracost as soon as I had heard about it. Really been happy to see some of the progress, especially with not needing to create a state file to analyze, and seeing some of the improvements you have with actual cost by using CloudWatch metrics. So really curious to see what else you got going on. It's really cool. I didn't know about Pulumi. That's neat to hear that there's support for that too.
Awesome. Yeah, it's work in progress. Perfect. Thanks for the introductions, everyone. Hugo, over to you for a quick demo of the Visual Studio Code extension.
Yes, okay, bear with me, sorry, this was sprung on me in the last minute by Ali, so you'll bear with me while I share my screen. All right, desktop, so can you see my lovely editor now? Yes. Okay, so you can see here, I've got a very basic file, which has got an AWS web app, which is M5 4 extra large. And you can see we've got this lovely little nice code lens over the top of this now. And this is because I am now using the shiny new Infracost VSCode plugin. Download it, install it. It's what all the kids are using. I think you'll enjoy it. But anyway, so this cost output is added to any block in your Terraform project that is supported by Infracost. And it also changes on file save. So if I bump that up to an M5 extra large, you can see that that's going to change with that. Likewise, if I add in a count, it's also going to change. It's going to take that into factor as well. And the really cool thing is, if you want to dive into some costs and actually see what's impacting those that resource, we've got a nice little pop out here where you can see exactly what is impacting your costs. So really cool, really easy to play around with. And there's a couple of use cases that we see here where you can kind of prototype certain resources or certain modules and see on the fly what the costs are, and kind of before they get to your, into your PR or your pipeline, and kind of helps you just play around with a couple of things. And I'll just showcase one more thing. This, obviously this is a very basic file with a resource, but obviously this supports modules right out the box and third-party modules as well, if that. So here you can see on the side, I've got a modules instance module, again, very basic. Apologies, I literally just whipped this up like 2 minutes ago, which has an AWS instance with a count of 2, which takes in the instance type thing, top level module call. And so if I just copy paste this module call that I have here, so you don't have to watch me type, and call out to the module instance, passing in this M5 for extra large, and I save it, we're going to get some output on top here. So you can see the underlying call for the module is located here. And again, we get this nice output. And here you can see that in that module, I have 2 web apps because of the count 2. And this is how much it's costing me. And again, as I said before, this supports third-party modules right out the box. So you can paste in your Cloud Posse modules, you can paste in your Terraform ECS modules here, and that also gives you price output and will give you this snapshot here. So again, very easy for prototyping, very easy to understand, what costs are impacting the Terraform right out the box. So I'm pretty excited for this. It is early days, so if you do use it and you do play around with it, it might have some rough edges, and we encourage you to please just raise an issue and we'll get on it ASAP and try and improve it as soon as we possibly can. So that's it.
Thanks, Hugo. My favorite feature is you can also run Infracost configure commands. So I switched my currency to the British pound because I'm in Edinburgh this week. But you can use euros or Brazilian reals or any other currency. So it kind of works very nicely with the CLI. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, I have a question. I actually was giving it a try. Wonder how this interacts with other plugins that put that information above code blocks. For example, I have one for Git. It tells me, last author, when it was changed. I don't see the Infracost one. Are they colliding? They are, huh?
It should be in line with it, to be honest. So it depends how many extensions you've installed, but it should show alongside it. If it's not, raise an issue, because it's most likely something going wrong with the Infracost extension. We've had a couple of issues recently with Windows users and potentially Linux users with VS Code giving us some bit of weird file paths, etc. like that. So I'm assuming that's probably what's going on with your machine, etc. So just raise an issue and we'll get to it ASAP and try and fix it for you, basically. So it's most likely just something going wrong internally.
Yeah, this is on Mac, but yeah, I will do that.
Yeah.
Does the VS Code extension also have support for the usage estimates that you can add in?
Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Sadly, not at this moment in time. This is very much something that everyone's been asking for, and we are thinking about adding support for it very quickly. But it would be just how we do that in an effective manner. There's a couple of options there. Obviously, the best option is to allow users to configure it through the kind of UI, etc. But we're thinking about doing something where it picks up on known paths. So if you have like a Infracost usage file in your project which is called Infracost.usage or something like that, but it picks it up automatically, etc. So there's a couple of things that we're playing around with, and yes, we're going to add that very soon, basically, because you're right. There'll be a lot of zero costs shown if without that.
Yeah, there's also a GitHub issue open on the VSCode repo for that. You can subscribe to that one for updates too. Or if you have any other suggestions of how we could pass that in, but the simplest one seems to be like just look up the known path. Any other questions on that? Okay. Yeah, that's getting a lot of community usage and love, so we'll keep supporting it. I want to talk briefly about the project name. So this is switching gears. Let me share my screen. Traditionally, when you've run Infracost, it would detect like the file path or the get repo name, and it would then show that in the CLI output as the project. It would also show it in the comment summary, and it would also show in the new Infracost Cloud product that I'll show. But this works most of the time, but when people use it with a plan.json file, all they see is plan.json, plan.json, plan.json. And if you've got multiple plan.json files and it's not clear what's what. So anyway, users have been asking for a way to customize this string. Like, let me define it and override it. So that's what we did. The Infracost, if you go into the CLI commands page in the docs, there's a new section called project names. And basically, Infracost breakdown and Infracost diff support a project name, which you can basically use to override that field. And it's simple as that. But it makes a big difference to the usability, especially if you have multiple projects. There's also a name attribute we added to the config file. So if you're running Infracost via a config file, the same thing works. And that was a quick demo.
Short question about,
Yeah.
can you use environment variables as well to configure
Yes.
this? Okay.
Yeah, you can basically set that to an environment variable so it's dynamic. That's exactly what people are doing in CI/CD.
Exactly, this is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but that's a great point. I'm going to update. I'll add an example with an environment variable because that's most likely what's going to be happening in CI/CD. That's a great point. Any other questions? Cool. Two other things we're working on right now. First one is support for any sort of flat discounts. What we're finding is people who are spending upwards of $1 million on cloud usually have some negotiated discount with a vendor, whether it's AWS EDP or Google's commitment discounts, I think they call them. This is part of our closed source product. This is one of the paid features, essentially. But this is what we're working on. And essentially, users will be able to define a flat percentage of a discount to apply to all the prices. We're not, in the future, we could support way more complex options. For example, Azure Enterprise Agreement users, I think they have access to an API as part of the Enterprise Agreement APIs where they can pull in the actual custom price book. But what we're seeing from users is the majority of users, they need support for something like AWS EDP discounts, and that's coming kind of soon. That's what we're working on. This will be part of the Infracost Cloud product, and we'll demo that hopefully at the next community call. Another thing which we're seeing a lot of users are doing manually themselves is configuring their CI/CD pipelines to have a threshold and notify someone. whether it's a Slack notification, usually what we're seeing. And what users are asking us is, can you do a managed version of that? So I can just set up some alert and say, all my projects or certain projects, and if they hit a limit, sorry, if any of the cost estimates goes over a specific amount, like the delta is over like $1,000 or something, or if the total cost estimate for the project goes over like $30,000 because that's my monthly budget, or if there's a big spike in terms of increase. If someone tries to spin up something like very large instances and it spikes the cost by more than 50%, just send me an alert. Don't block them, don't slow them down, just send somebody else an alert to review that. And essentially it's looking for those outliers and having a separate review process for those pull requests. So this is a very quick mock-up of what we plan to build. If you're interested, please leave a comment. One interesting comment we've heard so far from DevOps and SREs is we already have Grafana, Prometheus, Alert Manager, PagerDuty, all these other alerting systems. Can you expose this as a Prometheus endpoint or something where we can basically subscribe to the alerts, and then our alerting system on our side will decide who should get those alerts. So we'll consider that in future versions, but initially we just want to keep it very simple and just say, here's a quick email notification. So the person who wants to. Richard.
In my opinion, I'd like it in the YAML, because that way changes to budget are also approved through pull request. And so everybody sees what the change there is, and et cetera. I mean, it can still be Infracost Cloud, but it just creates it in Infracost Cloud or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. We have a config file, we have the usage file, if you can codify those. Our thinking was this would then be automatically fetched from your cloud accounts as a next step, because these figures are essentially budgets, specifically that one that you usually configured on a per account basis. So if we do provide a codified way of doing it, you can basically generate that.
Yep.
Great feedback. Any other questions on these two? So both of these two, if there's no other questions, both of these are essentially part of Infracost Cloud, and we're working with early users. If you'd like to basically work with us on this, ping me or email hello@Infracost. But see this as working alongside the CLI, where you can log in using GitHub or Google. I'm already signed in. Once you signed in, you can create concepts like organizations, and then you can create an API key against the organization. So you can very much see how, as a company, you could use Infracost Cloud. And the main value add initially is to provide a visibility dashboard. So you can see all the pull requests across these tens or hundreds of changes being made every day to CI/CD systems. You can kind of see all those pull requests in one place, see which pull requests are going to be changing costs, which branches are they going into, is it the main branch, is it just dev and test environments, which are probably less important, and then do things like set up these notifications. So there's some early docs here that explains how you can essentially try it, and we're working with those early users. We don't really have a fixed pricing or anything. We're working with the personas. Usually what we're finding are infrastructure managers or FinOps or senior DevOps and SREs who want to kind of bring this into the organization. So that's the main persona we're kind of building this Infracost Cloud for. And as I said, it will continue to work with the open source and the CLI version, which are more geared towards the individual contributor, looking at the cloud cost estimates on their terminal, in VSCode, in pull request comments, and so on. Any questions on that?
Oh, but great to see that your enterprise product is finally taking some shape. And also props to you for making the Infracost Cloud documentation, at least for now it seems so, accessible to everybody. Because if you're working in large companies and you don't have direct access to the tools, you don't have a login, hiding the documentation is just a pain.
Yeah, no, we definitely kind of like this approach of working with the community. We're going to be also kind of looking at how there's some features in here which everybody needs. For example, rotating my API key. At the moment, I can't rotate my API key because there is no UI for Infracost the CLI. So those things you can also do as part of this product, even if you're a free user, because those kind of basic things are kind of needed by everybody. So yeah, we'll keep the documentation there and open. And if there's any feedback on that, keep it coming. I think there was 2 other topics people wanted to talk about. So I'll stop sharing my screen and we can start with Mark if you want, Mark, and then we can go to Harsh.
Well, Harsh had some demos, so
Okay,
maybe we should start with him. Yeah.
Let's do that around. Harsh, over to you.
Sure. Let me start sharing my VSCode. Just give me a moment, please. I hope my VSCode is visible right now. Cool. So just to give a brief intro to the project. So this project is called QHub and we are undergoing a name change to Nebari. So QHub is basically, QHub or Nebari is basically a redistribution of the Jupyter Lab. So we are providing an entire data science stack on the Kubernetes. It can be on GCP, AWS, DigitalOcean, and Azure, so that the DevOps teams can entirely spin up a data science environment with Jupyter Lab, Dask, and the rest of the stuff. And they can get started with all sort of machine learning, data science, data analytics, and more of these. So one of the issues that was created on the project by OGC, which stands for Open Geospatial Consortium, they had basically requested us to develop a cost report. So before any sort of a QHub or a Nebari deployment, they can actually analyze all of the costs and they can be sure that, okay, this is how much we are going to spend. Or even if it is not a correct amount, it can be somewhere near around that. So how QHub works is like it just generates everything using Terraform templates. So we have all of these things stored in these particular states. And the most important for us is the Terraform state and the infrastructure. This is where all of our infrastructure is stored and specified at the end of the day. So we brainstormed upon this a lot, and Infracost was on the top of my mind because one of my mentors over there had suggested it to me. So after a brief discussion with Ali, like we just got started with the whole stuff. So to make this happen, we just wrapped the entire Infracost CLI over here so that we can just check if a user has got the Infracost installed, they have the API key configured. And what we can just do is like, we can just run this thing on the Terraform templates that they have generated for deployment. And we can just give them a very simplistic cost report. So I can just do a QHub cost estimate, and this would take a couple of seconds, but at the end of the day, it will just give me a very simple table. And it will contain all of the information that a user might need for the start. So it will contain the total monthly cost and the total hourly cost. This is what the issue creator just wanted. But since this is not an exact figure, because we have other stuff like node pools that might cost even more, we just gave them an entire resource breakdown and some documentation that, okay, this is the things that we are doing correctly, and this is the things that are not supported yet. And I would be entirely happy to work with Infracost on like doing some sort of open source contributions in getting those things, provided I have some mentorship on getting started with them. And yep, that's pretty much the entire feature over here. So following up to this, I particularly had this idea of extending this script over here as a Python package. So something like Infracost Py, so that because what we have done here is just to start, and we can expect a lot of other Python projects to be demanding such a feature as well, like for cost reports. So we can have something of this package so that the Python developers can use this as some sort of a SDK or something else, and they can just run Infracost on their machines and they can like get all the cost reports. So just abstracting the whole command line interface, that's pretty much it. So yeah, that was the whole demo.
That was very cool. One thing I want to highlight, which I've not seen much with the CI/CD integration, sorry, with any Infracost integration, is the link to the dashboard where you can see a full cost report. We saw an issue from Bitbucket users, for example, where Bitbucket doesn't have a collapse section, unfortunately, just doesn't support it. So those share links are designed for where you have very little summary information you want to expose, but if users are interested, you want to link to the full cost estimate, which has a diff, the breakdown, and kind of the full table. So that was a very cool use of that feature. Awesome.
Definitely. I'm also going to share a tutorial that we created, and we have fully credited Infracost over there. Let me just share that on the chat. So yeah, here it is.
Very cool.
So please do remark that this documentation is not exactly correct because we're undergoing a name change. So the QHub code is still in QHub. It has not been migrated to Nebari. So these commands might not work right now, but maybe revisit this in a month time and everything would work simply.
Very cool. Maybe share that on the community chat in case there are other people who want to help you with the Python wrapper as well.
Do that. Yep. So I can initiate a repository maybe by tomorrow or day after, and then I can start my development over there.
Sounds good. Because we keep the Infracost CLI versioned and the JSON output versioned, and we try very hard to make sure like we don't break people's CI/CD pipelines or integrations, you should be good. Just look for those version logs.
Definitely. Sounds great. Thanks for the opportunity, and it's a really cool project.
Thanks for presenting on the community call. That was very cool.
Very cool, Harsh. Very cool.
Mark, over to you.
Cool. So yeah, neat demos, Harsh. So I'm curious, more, I guess, abstract, just getting familiar with Infracost, but curious about what work you have planned for cost optimization. I guess that's going to be somewhere on the roadmap. And also if there's any, and this is maybe a harder question, if there's any opportunity for intersection with program analysis. Does the code that you're actually running on these machines that you're spinning up have a significant enough impact? I mean, in my experience, it did, but I've got limited experience. I don't know if it's big enough that matters to you guys. Is that something that is in the world of something to explore?
Yeah, Hugo, do you want to take the second question? Go for it.
I think it's super interesting, to be honest. It's not something we have in our near-term roadmap, but like we're heavily interested in the application layer for costs, and that means like Kubernetes, that means program analysis, and that means anything in between. And I think it's a very interesting space to essentially. What you're saying is like, okay, you've got essentially it's layers. It's like an onion skin, You've got your top layer infra cost, which we probably cover. Then you've got your application cost, which is stuff like Kubernetes and other kind of containerization platforms. And then you've got your program, layer where it's like, actually, how does that go all the way up the stack? And so, yeah, I think it's definitely something we would be 100% interested in and look to use in the future. Right now, obviously, it's just, how that would fit in. And I'm not, I think I just don't know enough about it, to be honest. I don't know how much we just don't have expertise in it. And so it'd be really interesting to maybe have a chat with you, Mark, and see what we could do there, because I think it's very interesting stuff and would definitely fit into that whole ecosystem very nicely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, like if we step back on a bigger vision, all software has costs. It's just as engineers, we've really not been trained, or we've not really had to think about the actual cost because it was always somebody else's problem. But as we kind of move towards more serverless style stacks, we have this toggle, and you can get as much as resources as you want. It's just a matter of how much money you want to spend. So that toggle wasn't in our control before. It was somebody in IT who would buy the servers. Now it's very much in our toggle, in our hands. And as we write code to move that toggle, then we kind of have this other layer of complexity where we don't really understand the cost at all. So I'm writing code that provisions Terraform, like creates 300 resources. Somebody else gets the bill. I make a bad choice. They then 3 months later find out, they tell me, and I have the feedback loop is just way too slow. In terms of like the cost, the bulk of the cost right now, where are those? Like the infrastructure code is usually what we find is like the bulk just now. That's why we focused on Terraform. But costs are an evergreen problem, just like security. So I think that will shift. Like in 5-10 years time, that'll probably shift where we see more costs shift towards more serverless stacks. And then after that, it will be edge, and I don't know what will be after that. But it all has costs. So go ahead, Hugo.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting what Mark is saying, because essentially, all of those costs are associated with your application.
Yes.
And it's like, how can you optimize that in order to up the chain? So it's like, right now, so I think the holy grail is obviously just get to a stage where we essentially show you your whole infrastructure cost, and we say, here's the avenues that you can optimize to like make it much more efficient. And at a base level, what you need for that is you need like, okay, what's your current usage? We have that from essentially a cloud bill. And then also, how is your application, how efficient and how performant is your application, and what is its requirements? And so I think it's going into that like cyclical of like, yes, the infrastructure at the top level is the most expensive, but that's probably dictated because of your requirements at like the application level and also the usage level. And it's just that whole symbiotic cyclical nature. So I think it's really interesting. And like thoughts I was having, about for a while is like how you could basically, do somewhat of a static program analysis of like how it would the limits, but also then like spinning up like load testing and analysis on top of that as well to see like, okay, here's the thresholds.
Profiling the application.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super interesting. Very, very interesting.
So we've got Richard from Pulumi on the call as well. And I think Pulumi's kind of thesis is also very interesting because they're kind of saying like, it doesn't matter if it's application code or infrastructure code, it's just TypeScript or Golang. It's code.
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting place to start kind of prototyping a bit, because there we have access to the actual API calls that the programming language is making to the cloud.
One of the things to consider too, and I was going to type this out, is possibly integrating with other cost providers in some sort of plugin management where you get the actual cost from them, and you can determine a run rate, because they're pulling in, like if you got a cloud health or a cloud ability, they're pulling in your real cost of that infrastructure. And then you could compare the two, say, hey, my real cost is this, I'm about to change to this. I don't know how you munch it together, but maybe there's a way.
Yeah, the CSV dumps from the cloud vendors themselves, they have a lot of like rich data on the actual API calls being made. And if you could tie those to the function calls essentially that the code is spinning up, that's kind of, that would be
this reminds me, I don't know if anybody's into hardware, but the Altium hardware design tool has this great part where you can drop in components and it lets you see the price and the stock of every component that you're dropping on your board in real time. So you can make choices about that. And this sort of seems like, it's the hardware analogy here.
Definitely. Mark, are you part of the Infracost Slack? There's a community Slack that you can join, and we can create like a channel where we can just jump into the contributors chat and we can keep chatting there on like what would be a good
I'll
point.
join that.
Yeah, Slack is by far the easiest place to contact us. My email inbox is like, seems to just get spammed with recruiters no matter what I do on my spam filter. And so I literally try and ignore as much email as possible. So yeah, Slack is the best place and the quickest place for us to respond.
Cool.
Anybody got any other topics?
I'm just excited to see Pulumi support. Didn't even know about that being in development. Because now I'm also thinking about, I got a new project and we are using Crossplane. Could we just use the cloud pricing API for Crossplane? And yeah.
You could stop using Crossplane and start using Pulumi.
I could use Terraform SDK. At least then I could still have a state file and Infracost just works.
There's a GitHub issue open on Crossplane too. Somebody started prototyping, and I think they even got one of the resources working. But yeah, given our team size, we need to focus. Otherwise, we'll just kill ourselves trying to do like a bit of everything. So we really appreciate the help from the community on this stuff.
I thought you wanted to start with Azure ARM templates. And what else do we have? CloudFormation.
There's CloudFormation. That's also getting a lot of like upvotes, but I don't know. Like we focus based on like what we see as users kind of pulling the most aggressively. So we kind of just listen to them and kind of just keep going.
So Richard, we're going to merge like a CloudFormation tomorrow, right? So would just screw the Pulumi integration, like CloudFormation is coming in first, you know.
That's fine. We have a tool to convert you once all those people realize.
Well, that's another thing. That is very cool, actually. That tool. One of our users was telling me about another tool where they're connecting to AWS to generate Terraform so they can generate the cost estimates, because they're not using infrastructure code at all just now, but it was TF Gen, or I can't remember, it was a project from Google. So yeah, a lot to do. I'm sorry I overran. I'll stop recording, put this on YouTube, and we'll see you guys more on the Slack channel and at the next community call.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
See you.
Cheers,
Thanks, guys.
everyone.
See ya.
Thanks.
Take care.